This is episode 115 of the Trauma Coaching for Latter-day Saints podcast. What is it like to do somatic work? I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm a Latter-day Saint mom with a history of trauma. I figured out how to heal my trauma and can help you do the same. Why? Because trauma is one obstacle to gathering Zion. Let's talk about what it takes to truly heal and find lasting joy. Before I get into the episode, I just want to thank you for listening. I truly appreciate it, and it keeps me going. It keeps me thinking about what I should say on the next episode. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me being critical of things that I hear and learn and things that I'm trying to apply in my own life. And it helps me filter through lots of the information that I encounter, and really think about, how do we heal trauma? How do we feel better? I would love to hear your questions and your feedback. So please leave a review, or you can connect with me on Voxer. I'm at Danita Bremer. If you've ever received a professional massage, the massage therapist will tell you at the end, or maybe sometimes at the beginning, to drink plenty of water and rest afterward, because massage can make you feel like you've been hit by a truck. It's similar to the feeling you get after you've cried a lot, or in my opinion, similar to the feeling of PMS, right? That feeling like you're just raw and, red, and that soreness that comes when we have lots of emotion. That is sometimes what it feels like to do the work of trauma healing and to work specifically somatically. So I wanted to talk about what it is like to do somatic work. Many of you listening to this podcast are probably very familiar with thought work or mindset, and it's different, right? I recently met with a group of ladies and did some demonstration of my coaching. And I started with mindset, and we actually ran out of time. We didn't have time for me to do kind of the same coaching or similar coaching, but from a somatic perspective. And one of the ladies afterwards said, I really wish I would have been able to see like both sides, right? And she asked, like, what is somatic work even like? And it just sparked this episode. And I do want to preface this. I'm going to talk a little bit about traditional therapy and versus somatic practices. And I myself have done some therapy, but not a whole lot. So I don't have extensive experience. I've probably been to 5 or 6 therapists for 1 to 5 sessions each. So like I said, not extensive experience. So I can't speak for everyone. But in most forms of psychotherapy or talk therapy, and those generally overlap in a Venn diagram, right? And I'm actually going to drop a link in the show notes for an article that I found that lists out lots of different forms of psychotherapy. I thought that would be helpful for you. So in most forms of talk therapy, we are talking to understand the external and internal dynamics, right? So we're like talking about the dynamics. For some people, this is a necessary first step, and it's all that is needed. But for others, there is still this sense of incompletion or lack once they do talk therapy. They just still feel like, it didn't help me the way I wanted it to help me, right? And so maybe some what I would call deeper, quote unquote, deeper work. I mean, none of the work is deeper or more shallow. It can feel that way though, right? So in somatic therapy or somatic practice, because not all practitioners are therapists, instead of talking about the external or internal dynamics, the practitioner is literally working with the actual dynamic. So I know this is kind of confusing. Like, what does that mean? I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. Yoga is a form of somatic work. You're literally moving your body, and somatic, soma means body. You're breathing, you're noticing, you're adjusting, right? You're not talking about like, well, when I'm on the yoga mat and I do down dog, I feel some tension in my hamstrings, right? You're not talking about it as if it already happened. You are literally moving through it, noticing that kind of thing, right? And then also, I know I've mentioned before on the podcast, Peter Levine, who is one of the kind of pioneers of trauma work, who he is actually a psychologist. I don't know what his actual title is or how he would describe himself, but I would generally say he's a psychologist. And he founded Somatic Experiencing, which is a specific modality of somatic work. So you can actually find him on YouTube, quite a few videos of what he does, somatic experiencing. And you'll see that he does talk to the client. So speaking is a way we convey what is happening in the body, right? But he'll ask the clients to, okay, stop right there. Now, what does that feel like? Right? Or move your arms this way. And so it's very much a movement and body awareness practice, right? So I encourage you to go check that out because that will give you a bit of an idea. I am going to attempt to describe what working with me in a session might look like. But please keep in mind that every person is different and every session is different. So I have some clients that really need to kind of talk and get some of their thoughts out at the beginning of a session. And some clients who are like, okay, let's just jump right into what I'm feeling. And then from session to session with the same client, they might want to talk more, or they might ask me like, can we focus on the mindset work? Because I am also trained in mindset work. Most of the time, my clients have no problem going into the feeling work and the body work. But even the same client from session to session, different things will show up, different things will happen. So these are like very general, broad, like it could be this way, just to give you an idea of what it might be like. And also keep in mind that the work that I do, this somatic work, is very experiential. And so sometimes it can be difficult to describe. Like, how do you describe salty? Right? This something that tastes salty, and you say, "Oh yeah, this is very salty." And what if somebody was like, "Well, what's salty?" It is almost beyond description, right? It's hard to describe. You have to experience it. So that's the exact reason why I always offer free sessions before anyone ever works with me long term. I want to give them a taste of what it might be like. Now, it might not always be like that free session, but it will give you a little bit of an idea, right? So on these free sessions, which I'll drop the link if you want to schedule a free session in the show notes, on these free sessions, I always say there's two reasons for this free session. The first reason is for you to just experience what it's like to work with me and the kind of work that I do. And the second reason is for you to feel into, does this feel safe to me? And if it doesn't feel safe, I completely do not take that personally, because the body is not logical, right? You might not feel safe with me because I remind you of your third grade teacher who you didn't like or something like that. And you might not even know that. There might be just something about my energy or the way I look or the way I sound that just rubs you the wrong way, right? Now, if you listen to this podcast, I'm guessing that's not true, but many people come to me by referral. And so I always say the first step is just a free session. Let's just meet together as if you were already my client. Well, I'll take you through a session and then you get to feel into that. Did that feel okay? Did that feel right? Did it feel like I want to take the next step? So keep that in mind, that sometimes it's hard to describe this work, but I'm going to attempt to do it today. So first of all, I do all my sessions over Zoom. So usually I'm sitting at my desk and the client is often sitting at their desk or, at a computer somewhere. Some clients Zoom in over their phones, and sometimes they are a little bit mobile. I sometimes have clients with young kids or babies. And so I have to meet the client where they are. So we have to just recognize that sometimes the baby might be in the session, or sometimes the client might need to cut the session short because baby is there or toddler is melting down or something like that. Right now, most of my clients make arrangements for their children if they do have children. But this is real life. And I want to meet my clients in their real life because one of my goals is to help them stay regulated. And there's no point in practicing regulation in a vacuum of circumstances that aren't like your real life. I want you to be able to be regulated in your real life. Okay. I usually start by asking, how are you feeling today? This is a very open-ended question, and it allows the client to either say what's on their mind, if they need to kind of get some thoughts out, or for them to start describing how they feel. How am I feeling today? Feeling a little tired. I notice just a tiny bit of pain behind my brow. My middle back between my shoulder blades feels a little bit rigid and tight, right? So, depending on the client, depending on their history with me and history with somatic work, most of my clients probably start with, like, I'm feeling pretty good today, or, I'm feeling a bit frazzled. My kid is in the other room and my daughter had a huge meltdown earlier, right? So most of the time they're going to be telling me their thoughts, but even these thoughts will help point me in the right direction to understanding where their nervous system is today, right now, right? So there's no right or wrong way to start a session or to be in a session together. I meet the clients wherever they are. But these initial I call them thought downloads, are often a strong indication of where the client is in that moment. And I always stick with what is happening in the present moment. Sometimes memories or something from the past might come up, but I'm always thinking about it in terms of, okay, this memory is coming up in this moment for a reason. I wonder what it is. So, no matter where the client is at the top of the session, I look for moments to guide the session toward their body and what is happening in their body, and toward an awareness of what the internal landscape is like. I'm always tracking body sensations, emotions, any sights or sounds or other information from our senses that might come up. Definitely the mindset around these things and any movements or impulses that might be present or wanting to be expressed. This information helps me understand not only where the client's nervous system is, but also which direction to go, right? So, the goal of somatic work is threefold. The first goal is to support the client in spending less time dysregulated and more time in a felt sense of safety. So we want to notice things that feel safe. We want to notice the dysregulation, right? And be with those things. And a lot of times just simply the awareness shifts things. The second reason of somatic work, and maybe these are more broadly reasons for any kind of work in general, but especially somatic work and nervous system work. So the second reason is to increase the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is the description we give to the nervous system that encapsulates everything in our sympathetic or our parasympathetic that we are able to tolerate. So remember, sympathetic is generally speaking the activation, the fight or flight response, the kind of get up and go response. And the parasympathetic is generally speaking the slow down, shut down, rest and digest response. So it's any parts of either of those branches of our autonomic nervous system that we can be with and tolerate and not try to get away from. That's our window of tolerance. Another way to say this is the window of tolerance is the range of internal landscape that we are okay being with. So we always want to be expanding this window. We want to expand to include more sensations, more nervous system response that we can be with. Okay. Because that's how trauma is caused, right? Is when we get to the edge of what we're okay being with and we can't be with it anymore, our bodies will shut us down and, kind of pack it away. And that's what trauma is. And then the third reason for somatic work is to improve the mind body connection. Now, when I say mind body connection, I'm not referring to a spiritual practice like meditation or yoga, although those might be supportive in your journey to increase your mind body connection. But it's literally like a felt sense of a connection between your mind and your body. And I have an example from my own life from just a couple of days ago. The other day, I was in the shower and I was in a bit of a rush. I always seem to be in a bit of a rush. That's where my nervous system tends to live. And I was washing my face. So I had put the soap in my hands. I was washing my face and kind of going through the motions of washing my face when all of a sudden I just kind of felt like I'm washing my face. I can feel my hands on my cheeks and on my forehead and on my nose. And it was like this sort of moment of presence, right? Where I was just there with myself, feeling my hands, feeling my face, feeling myself washing my face. Now, I know this sounds so simplistic, but I don't have many of those moments, even me as a practitioner. And I've been doing this work for a while. I've been doing this work for almost 2 years, this somatic work. The getting in the habit of noticing and connecting to yourself, I still kind of just go through the motions, right? And so it was this moment of clarity and presence that I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm trying to help my clients do is what we're trying to do is stop going through the motions and be more connected to ourselves. Now, does that mean we stop taking showers or washing our faces? No. But when we do whatever it is we're doing, we're connected to ourselves in the doing of it, right? So, in a recent session, a client was describing the sensations that she felt in her body when she felt like she was judging someone else. And we discovered that there was fear under this judgment. And when I asked her about the fear, she naturally spoke about it in a way that made her feel like she wanted to shrink and get smaller. So I encouraged her to shrink and get smaller. I just said, okay, follow that, allow that, go ahead and shrink and make your body smaller. And lots more came up for her when she was able to do that. Previously, she was judging herself for having judgments of others. And she was just like, I just can't stop judging them, but I don't want to be judging them. I want to be loving and kind, right? And by working with the sensations and the impulses, she got to a place where she felt a sense of calm and compassion and love. She described it as kind of a golden column throughout her chest and gut. And when I asked her to think about the person she was judging, she said, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not judging them anymore. It's like I just see them as a wounded person who's doing their best. So, this is the beauty of somatic work. This is just one simple example that we can look at the thoughts that create our feelings, that drive our feelings, because sometimes thoughts do drive our feelings and create those feelings. Or we can just look at the feelings and see what they are telling us, right? In another recent session, I could tell that my client didn't really want to be with the sensation that felt really awful to her. She kept wanting to just talk about it. And so I kind of reflected that back to her. I just said something along the lines of, yeah, even here on this session, I noticed that you don't want to be with that feeling. You would rather be talking about the feeling. And she kind of paused and she was like, okay, yeah, I can see that. And I asked for her permission, like, do you feel like you're ready to touch into this feeling? Because there's always agency, always, always, always. You never have to do anything you don't want to do. And in fact, it's counterproductive because there's so much information in exploring the things that we don't like, that don't feel good, that we don't want to do. But she was able to be like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to do this. And we moved very slowly because the sensations she was feeling, this feeling of being choked, felt very scary, as it should, right? Choking is literally like a life or death thing. So I gave her lots of spacious time to just notice and allow. And we kind of sat there in silence for a while. And then she described how it had dissipated. This feeling was coming up around some resentment she was having toward another person. And after allowing the sensation, we checked in with, okay, how are you feeling toward this other person now? And she just said, yeah, I don't really feel anything toward them. Right. So we spent a lot of time on that session, kind of talking about the sensations, doing more of sort of the thought work or the mindset angle. But then once she was ready to really work with the dynamic of the sensation, it went very quickly to a resolution that I don't think she would have been able to get to any other way. So, as you can kind of get a feel for, as I'm describing this, these examples, moving very slowly is important. And to be honest, sometimes that can be frustrating. I have felt that way in my own work. But if we move too fast, we miss essential information that our bodies are trying to communicate to us. So, many sessions are me either asking questions or directing the client to move in a certain way or just pause, things like that. And then long periods of silence while the client explores their own internal landscape. And like I said, there's always agency. You never have to do anything that you don't want to. And in fact, it's counterproductive. There's so much information in exploring the edges, right? The edges of like, oh, I can go this far, but not any farther. In another recent client session, I was, doing this somatic work with the client, and all of a sudden she burst into tears. And so I just sat there silently waiting. I think I may have even said, like, it's okay, you can just cry. So although we were going pretty slowly, it was still too much or too fast for her in some way. So I just kind of backed away and allowed her lots of time. I even turned my video off, or I think I turned her video off. And we explored what it felt like for her to cry spontaneously and unexpectedly. What was that like for her so that she could process that? Because I didn't want that to turn into another trauma, right? So she was able to feel into that and sort of process that with my support. Other times, I might direct a client to stand up, to walk around, to shake their hands or another part of their body. We might punch the air or stomp. We might push away. Um, we just kind of follow the urges and the movements that our bodies are wanting to do. And at yet other times, visions or memories might come up for clients. They might say something like, and I've experienced this, I see myself as a little girl, or, oh, I just had this memory pop into my head. This is a natural part of the process. Somatic work is highly unlogical, not illogical. It's very logical to do somatic work. But it's unlogical. It doesn't happen in a like step one, step two, step three, right? It's a very organic process. So whatever the body manifests, we follow it because there's a reason why those memories or those pictures might come into your mind in this moment. Wherever you are on your journey, I encourage you to at least experiment with somatic work. I have found that it can be much more direct than thought work. And listen, I love thought work. I absolutely love thought work. I love the model. I got lots of use from that, but it only took me to a certain point. And what I've been thinking about lately is just this idea of If thoughts create feelings, drive actions, and the whole kind of heart of the model or of, cognitive behavior therapy is the feelings, then why are we trying to work with the thoughts when we could just work directly with the feelings themselves, right? So that's just the last thing I want to leave with you is just to encourage you to conjure up some courage to do this work. It, like I said, it doesn't always look this way. It's very organic and we just work with whatever's in the present moment. But I have found it to be very powerful. So, for the journaling questions for today, I thought I would just give you a few questions that I ask often on my sessions that you can kind of play with and experiment with on your own. The first question is, how are you feeling right now? And I would just encourage you to notice, are there lots of thoughts that come up, or do you naturally want to describe the actual sensations or the feelings or emotions? Number two is, how do you know you're feeling that way? So this just kind of takes it a level deeper. Number three, what urges or impulses do you notice on a regular basis? So you might have an urge to go grab a handful of chocolate chips. I'm guilty of that. You might have urge all the time to like stretch open your chest, as an example. Do you follow your urges? That's question number four. Do you follow your urges? Why or why not? That can be very illuminating to think about that. And lastly, number five, if you put your hands over your heart and simply pay attention to what is happening in your body, allowing it all to be there, what do you notice? We had the most amazing first live session of Presence, my somatic based group program. And I can just tell that it's going to be some of the most beautiful spiritual, somatic, and mind work that I've ever done with clients. There's an added potential for healing when we meet in a group, and we experience that on this first session. And there's always so much to learn. Like a person can just say one little thing, and that can be the one thing you needed or the one thing that rattles around in your brain. You can find out more about Presence at danitabremmer.com/presence, but I want you to know that it is a year-long membership. You can pay monthly payments of $222 or a lump sum of $2,222, which is a 2-month discount across a whole year. And if you pay right now and you pay in full that 2222, you become a lifetime founding member and you'll have access to the program for life, not just for 1 year. So for a limited time until March 31st, 2023, you pay one lump sum, 2222, and then you get access to this group for as long as you want it. But the deal ends March 31st, 2023, or until we reach 20 lifetime members, whichever comes first. So don't wait. This is going to be such an amazing group. It's such a great deal for somatic based work. And so I really encourage you to come and check it out. You can do a free session with me if you want to experience what that's like before you commit to the program. All right, that's enough for now. And so are you. The impact I am making in the world grows best by word of mouth. Would you please share this episode with someone this week? And if you're ready to address your own trauma with my support, go to danitabremmer.com to schedule a free trauma assessment call. Until next time, go be yourself and follow the spirit.